Robots are saving the world one step at a time in Biped. Is learning how to walk a group activity? Biped has a very clean look to it, and a visual style reminiscent of classic 3D platformers. Large gold coins and stars are sprinkled through the levels for collecting. There's very little detail to objects and environments, and it is mostly free of anything that would distract from the linear path of a level. The lack of detail is fine for keeping the focus on the direction players need to go, but it can be occasionally difficult to distinguish between what is a path and what is a barrier. Players with the urge to explore might find themselves wasting time trying to climb into areas that look perfectly climbable, but aren't.
The look of the levels is varied, considering the minimalist approach. Between the 7 levels of the campaign, there are 4 different environments, and the pro levels all take place in a basic spaceship environment, similar to the initial tutorial. In a word, the game is cute. You play and meet adorable 2-limbed robots moving awkwardly in a world that looks like it was designed by them and for them. The game remains bright and whimsical throughout, highlighted by a peppy soundtrack that sounds like it came from the Nintendo Wii library. The whimsy carries over to the gameplay as well. Each player is a bipedal robot tasked with uncovering and activating a beacon at the end of each level. Levels are obstacle courses that test the player's cooperation and coordination. Every action in the game is performed using the analog sticks, with each controlling one of your 2 feet. The tutorial teaches you how to walk by moving your feet one at a time, and how to swing one foot around while the other is planted on the ground. You can grip certain indicated objects by simply holding your raised foot in a certain position near the object until the game decides that you've gripped it. This is used for simple, mostly contextual manipulations like pulling levers or moving objects around the environment. Pushing both analog sticks down at the same time allows you to skate on normal surfaces. This can get you through the non-obstacle parts of a level faster, but you can't control yourself as well when doing it, and it's easy to get caught on pieces of the environment. There's no real gameplay advantage to skating, except in the rare time challenge of collecting blue coins in areas where skating is possible. It does allow you to do some cool dance moves though.
Each level is a series of challenges that are passed by manipulating the environment to solve simple puzzles, or by carefully placing your feet, either to match a pattern or traverse the environment. Whatever the action needed, it will require some level of coordination with your partner. This could be one player pressing switches in a pattern to create the path for the other to cross a gap, or both of you timing your steps carefully to progress safely. Each campaign level introduces a new mechanic, usually abandoning mechanics learned from the previous levels. This makes each level feel fresh at the expense of any sense of progression. You usually aren't building on previously learned skills, but rather tackling a different challenge, which may or may not be easier actually. There's a feeling that the game was made as a showcase for a few different mechanics, and each level is designed specifically for one of them. In some ways, this is a plus, as each new level is a different experience, and no game mechanic seems to overstay its welcome. If a certain mechanic is frustrating to a player, they will likely only have to deal with it in one level. But we can see this game being disappointing to anyone looking for that cumulative puzzle experience found in other games, where each level gets more complicated and challenging. The pro levels that open up as you play add a bit to the longevity and difficulty of the game, but they're very brief. The challenge of Biped doesn't come from figuring out the puzzles, but from effectively coordinating with your partner, and occasionally overcoming wonky physics. The game never reaches a level of friendship-ending frustration, but occasionally quirky physics and a lack of guidance on how gripping works in certain situations sometimes makes the game feel like it's working against you, even if you're working well together.
Levels are short, taking us about 20 minutes to get through each on the first try, though the game challenges you to get through each of them in 10 minutes with as few deaths as possible. Levels are also very linear, and there's minimal reward for exploration. Occasionally, there's a relatively hard-to-reach star collectible, or some coins that are just off a platform or behind a column. However, there's no camera control, and sometimes the camera is zoomed in too much to properly explore the environment. This might be intentional, to obscure some coins off screen, but the environments are so small that it just felt cumbersome when it happened.
The solo game is a different mode entirely. You play through the same environments with changes to all the challenges to accommodate a solo player. I found these focus more on your timing, and sometimes coordinating yourself with an AI that sets the pace for a challenge. Solo could be fun at times, and it's a good way to get extra coins. I was usually curious to see how the levels differed from the co-op variants, but coordinating with the AI was much more frustrating than with another player. There's also less content in the solo campaign. Overall, I would not recommend purchasing this game strictly for solo play.
When you open the main menu, co-op is the first option, and most of the trophies in the game are related to co-op play. This is the first two-player game we've played where the single-player mode feels like an afterthought. Few games make cooperation feel necessary in the way that Biped does. Every puzzle is a joint effort that requires both players' attention to solve, and every uncoordinated step can lead to failure.
There's no romantic theming in the game, but it does sometimes feel like a couples game. How quickly you get through a challenge contributes to a rating system that the game calls Harmony, which is symbolized by a heart. The player characters are a pink sphere and a blue cube, and the game is short, with accessible gameplay to accommodate less experienced gamers with not a lot of time. The emphasis on co-op does come with some costs. The camera zooms in and out as you move apart, but moving too far apart causes the game to respawn you near each other, which hampers the limited exploration even more. And although we found the game easy, both players will need to perform the same tasks, so there is rarely an opportunity for one player to pull the slack if another player finds a task difficult.
There's minimal story in Biped, and it's only explained briefly in text at the beginning of the game. Like many 3D platformers, the emphasis is on gameplay, not narrative.
Outside of the physics issues we mentioned earlier, most of the game was bug-free. In the very last level, we experienced a bug where the camera zoomed out completely, making it impossible to finish. Luckily, we were able to reload at the nearest checkpoint and didn't have to restart the level over again.
Biped is cute, fun, and accessible. It might be a little too easy, and it might be a little too short, but it's got great emphasis on co-op play nonetheless. If it appeals to you the same way it appeals to us, this is one we'd recommend.